Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I am here today with a new video, and it has been a really long time since I've done a video, but I was sitting in this location last week, and I was doing my morning pages, and I was like, I just kind of feel like making videos again. My position on why I stopped videos has not changed, but I feel like the risk seems pretty low in the grand scheme of things, and in the grand scheme of things of what's going on these days, I just feel less worried about things like that, given the things that we need to take care of daily and all of the things. So I'm not going to go too much into that, but it feels weird not to acknowledge it. So I hope that you are staying safe. I hope that you are self-isolating if you can, and if you're not, if you're an essential worker, thank you for what you do. Right now, if you can hear the noise in the background, people are still picking up garbage, so thank you to those folks picking up garbage, and to people who work in the healthcare system, to people who work in essential manufacturing, and of course to people in the stores, because my goodness, I can't imagine what they're going through and the high demand. And if you go, just practice social distancing, give people their space, especially the people that work there, and wash your hands frequently. Let's all get through this together. It is a very challenging and unusual time, so do the things that make the difference for all of us. And okay, PSA off. Okay, so on to the books that I plan on reading in April. So for April, I picked a whole whack ton of books, of course, and I'm not having good reflection moments with my tablet, but we're just gonna have to work with it. And a list, as always, of all of the events and books will be down below, because that's how I roll. Yeah, so if it's not super legible, I'm sorry, but I think today is a done better than perfect kind of day, so we're gonna roll with it. So I have some things I'm gonna participate in April, and then I also have some of my own challenges that I'm working on. And then I think, hopefully, if this video doesn't go terribly long, I also have an unwrapping that I would like to do. So let's get this party started. First up, I am going to be participating in the Women Write Classic Sci-Fi and Fantasy Readathon, which is hosted by Maya of Maya Reads, and it's being run from April 1st to the 12th. Now, this is not a character from a book, but it is one of my favorite characters in the world of science fiction and fantasy, and that's Delenn from Babylon 5. She is so awesome. But yeah, so this is a readathon about reading works written by women, and I think the parameter is before 2000. I will link to Maya's video up above and down below, as of course. And there is one challenge to try and read through the decades, read 3 consecutive decades, and I think I might be able to manage that, because the first book that I'm planning on reading is a carryover from March, which is actually a carryover from February. That is Swordmaker by Jennifer Roberson. This is the 3rd book in the Tiger and Dell series. It is a fantasy series, if the glowing, wonderful cover was not, and the sword wasn't obvious, and this is one of my favorite series of all time, so I'm rereading it, but also want to finish it off, because it was 4 books when it was originally written, and then 3 additional books came out later, which I didn't know about until later, so I never ended up finishing it. So I'm rereading it very slowly. I read the first book last January, so hopefully I get to finish Swordmaker during the readathon. That is going to be the first goal, and this one was written in 1989, so there's that. Then going back to the 70s, I am going to be reading Silver on the Tree, which is the Dark is Rising series sequence book number 5. It is the final book in the series, and this is by Susan Cooper, and it was written in 1977. This is one where I was really not super keen on it. I read the first book in 2016, I think, and the second book, and I was like, I don't know. And then earlier this year, or late last year, I read the 3rd book, and I loved it, and I just finished the 4th book, and I loved that. So I'm like, yes! So might as well keep the love going and finish off the series, and that's going to feel really awesome. I also, to go back the next decade, I also plan on at least starting The Ship Who Sang by Anne McCaffrey. This is science fiction. The Dark is Rising is fantasy. It's kids fantasy, but it's kind of like urban fantasy, because current world set, mostly, kind of, sort of. It's a bit I would say it's urban fantasy. That's, even though it's mostly rural, but that's splitting hairs. Anyway, so, and then the last up, The Ship Who Sang by Anne McCaffrey. This one I picked up randomly at a library book sale. Gosh, when are the next library book sales going to be? Not like I don't have lots of books to read that I've already bought, but anyway, it's okay. I can survive without a library book sale, but still, I'm gonna miss them till they come back. But it's safer to not do them. So anyway, so this, I don't know too much about it. I think it's about a woman who is the brain of a ship, I think. Not sure. So yeah, so that's from 1969, and it just looks so awesome. So I have some sci-fi, I have some fantasy, and I won't be able to read this, but I did think it was a good tie-in if you are interested in. The Lady Vaults are reading the Venus of Dreams by Pamela Sargent, which is the first in a trilogy, and the Lady Vaults is also is a book club that's dedicated to reading sci-fi and fantasy by women that's at least 20 years old, so it's exactly sort of the same parameters, so that's awesome. It's run by Elizabeth from Books and Pieces. I have had horrible success in trying to keep up with that book club, so I just mostly note their titles and that I want to read them, and I knew I wasn't going to make it through this one because it's 750 pages, and reading a book that long is just not very likely. So I thought I would stick with some easier, shorter, and already started titles, and go with that. So yeah, so that feels like it's going to be a lot of fun. Next up, I am actually buddy reading a book. I'm very excited that to be buddy reading with Izzy, Punk Rock Girl PA, and we are going to be buddy reading Illuminae by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. This is the first in the Illuminae trilogy, and I've never read it. I did read the first sort of like 50 pages, I think, for a readathon last year, and I was gonna read it digitally, but then my whole expired. I don't know. Anyway, it is because it's done in sort of a different style. I thought it would be smarter to get the physical edition. I was going to get it from the library, but all the libraries are closed until further notice, at least here in Toronto. They've just closed them down. The ebooks, of course, are still available. They increased Hoopla credits, so that was a bonus. But yeah, so I ordered a copy and then left it in quarantine for 72 hours, and now it is available for me to read now that it's made it through quarantine. Yeah, so this is going to be, I hope, a lot of fun to read. It is a YA science fiction series, and Izzy's going to be doing the live show on April 27th, so if you haven't read Illuminae or you want to read Illuminae, now is your chance, because I imagine we will hopefully read the whole series if things go well, and I'm really looking forward to it, and although I think I need to start this one early because even though it's 600 pages, even though it's different formatted, it's 600 pages, which is a lot of pages. So there's that one. Next up, I've been participating in the Readathon, the BookTube Readathon, hosted by Alex Black and Abby Mac Reads, pardon me, and the challenge this month is a genre you don't really read anymore, and I had a hard time figuring out what that could be, so I just looked on Goodreads on anything that didn't have a date, because I joined Goodreads 10 years ago, and that's the parameter for the rereading, I think, is 10 years, like the guideline, I'm not gonna... Anyway, so yeah, so I wasn't sure what to pick for that, so I have two options. One is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This is dystopic, well, it's science fiction, but it's dystopic, which is not a genre I read that often, although I don't know if Illuminae is. It's one that I go through sort of waves. I think like when the Hunger Games came out, or when I read the Hunger Games, I read a bunch of stuff, and then now I feel like I don't really want to read dystopic stuff because it feels too real because of the world. Not right now, but a couple years ago now. Not so much here, but in the States. I won't go into more, but you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, so Ray Bradbury is one of my favorite authors, and this is not too long. It's like 250, oh no, less than 200 pages, although it is. And this is the first book, I bought this when I was working in bookstores, and it's the first book that I owned and purchased new that has now actually yellowed. It's now that old. So, yeah. So that's one option, and then the other option is The Sisters Impossible by J.D. Landis, and this is one that I actually have the copy from my junior high. I don't know how I got it. I didn't steal it. I wouldn't have done that. But yeah, this is a series that, or a book that's about two sisters, and it follows, I think, mostly the younger sister who ends up taking ballet with the older sister's ballet school, and they sort of don't get along, but they both end up taking dance together, or I don't think they're in the same class or anything. Anyway, this I'm including as a genre I don't read very much anymore because it is basically like realistic fiction, which is something I don't read a lot of. Like if it would be a film, like drama, I don't tend to read a lot. I tend to read a lot of quote-unquote genre fiction, and so that's why I thought it would be a good fit. I loved this when I was younger, I think mostly because it had sisters and dance, not so because I used to take dance with my sisters. We all danced, and so yeah, so there's definitely some like books about siblings. That's what I think really meant something to me. It was about siblings, even though in this the siblings don't get along, and I actually really quite get along and have always gotten along with my sisters, but anyway. So yeah, so that's the one that I chose for that. Now we get on to, and of course information about the Readathon will be down below if you want to jump in. I think you can participate as much or as little as you want, I've been really slow at doing my rereads. I think Swordmaker is my February reread. Still working on it. It'll happen. It'll happen. Anyway, next up, I'm actually going to be doing Stacking the Series this year. I decided this 2 weeks ago when things started to go a little, like, when the world started to be like, what? I needed something to focus on, so I decided to put some Stacking the Series books together, and I'm going to do a separate video or videos about that because there's lots of explaining, like, stuff about, like, how it works and the tiers and all that stuff. Anyway, I picked a lot of books. So anyway, the ones that I'm working on for this month, Swordmaker is part of that. I'm going to work through the Tiger and Dell series. I'm also going to finally get back to Barsoom by Edgar Rice Burrows, which is, and I'm going to read book 2, The God of Mars. This is the series that became John Carter film, or John Carter of Mars, it's a sort of I think it's a combination of science fiction and fantasy, because although the setting is Mars, it does feel very fantasy or adventure-y to me, yeah, so this is the next one I'm reading. I'm currently reading it. I read these ones really, really slow, which means I shouldn't have picked them for such a high tier, but whatever. Optimism. So, The Gods of Mars. I'm actually quite enjoying it so far. I'm also enjoying Caressed by Ice by Nalini Singh. This is the 3rd book in the Psy-Changeling series. This is a paranormal romance / urban fantasy series that follows a long arc plot, but each book is about a different couple, and it's a world where there's humans, shapeshifters, or shifters of all different varieties, cats, wolves, bears, I'm sure there's more, and then also Psy, who are psychic or telepathic or telekinetic, like humans that are, it's interesting, I don't think they consider the Psy to be humans. So they're like a different grouping, and they have telepathic abilities, and I think they kind of like run things mostly in terms of like business and stuff, so that's also interesting. Anyway, I'm enjoying this one. I've already started. I am enjoying it. I read these pretty slowly, so again, I shouldn't have picked it for such a big stack, but whatever, we're throwing caution to the wind here, folks. One of the odder choices for my Stacking the Series is the plays of Ibsen, so I'm going to be reading Lady Inger of Oestraat. Ibsen is a Norwegian playwright and this one is his 3rd play, and it was performed in 1855. I read a whole bunch of Ibsen over the past couple of years and really enjoyed it, so I want to eventually work my way through all of Ibsen. So I'm mostly starting at the beginning for his works, but I think I'm going to jump a couple so that I get some of the really notable works that I haven't read before. I've read The Wild Duck, I love that. Ghosts was really good. What was the other one I really liked? I wasn't a huge fan of Hedda Gabler. The Master Builder was good, but it was The Wild Duck and the other one that it was just like, oh, I can't remember. A Doll's House. Yeah, it's so good. Anyway, so I've read 2 so far this year. The Burial Mound, which I loved, and then Cataline, which I didn't get. It was historical, Roman, military. I'm not sure what, no, I'm sure what happened, but I'm not sure what the theme was, so I should probably read the Wikipedia page. Anyway, okay, last up for stacking the series for this month, that's on the TBR. Hopefully I will get to more because there's lots of them. I'm reading through the Soloman Kane series, or stories, and this is by Robert E. Howard. I need to read the third one, which is Rattle of Bones. These are actually stories, so they're more like 20 to 50 pages. So, like, I think that's kind of sneaky for me in terms of stacking the series, but I don't care. If it gets me through a series, whether it's stories or plays or books, I'm happy. So Rattle the Bones, if you're unfamiliar with Soloman Kane, he's a Puritan, and so it's kind of like sword and sorcery, but more urban fantasy, darker, paranormal horror, adventure, kinda. Just sort of like that. It's from the author who wrote Conan the Barbarian and the Conan stories, but my brother, when I was talking to him, said that I might like the Soloman Kane stories better, so I decided to start reading them, and guess what? I do like them. So there's that. Also, continuing into the realm of Shakespeare, I am 3 poems away from reading the entire works of Shakespeare. I read all the plays a couple of years ago. I read the sonnets. I finished the sonnets early in the year, and so for now, for April, I'm just planning on reading A Lover's Complaint, which is just 3 pages, but 3 really big pages because like double columns and all that stuff. So yeah, so I'm hoping to just read that. I'm just committing to that, but if I read the final 2 poems, which are The Passionate Pilgrim, which is 2 pages. Oh no, it's more than that. And then The Phoenix and Turtle. I might just go for gold on that and finish that off completely. We shall see if that's what happens. What else do I have? Because there's more. There's more. I also am going to, oh yeah, I have a book of poetry, more poetry. The Crown Ain't Worth Much, and this is by Hanif Abdurraqib, and I ended up, this one's a bit weird, like I got to this in a bit of a unusual route. I watched a poetry class that he taught on Skillshare and then looked him up, and last month I read another work of poetry by him, or I listened to it on Scribed, and he narrated it himself, and it was so good. I think it was one of my favorite titles in March, if not my favorite title. So this one I'm going to read in ebook format, and I really like the rhythm of things and of his work, and I just found it really, really good, and I like poetry. So yeah, so working some Shakespeare and some Hanif Abdurraqib. Hope I'm saying that right. There's actually he notes the spelling, the pronunciation of his name. Either he does or someone else does in a forward of like one of his other ones, because he also has a book about a tribe called Quest, and I was gonna listen to that, but it's actually narrated by someone else, and I was like, oh, I wasn't quite ready to make that jump. So yeah, so I'm going to read this one instead, because I'm going to read the poetry. And then also I'm carrying over a couple of titles, including The Woman I Wanted to Be by Diane von Furstenberg, who is a fashion designer. She designed the wrap dress, like the iconic wrap dress. And I'm listening to this on audio. I also have it on Kindle, and it's fabulous, and she narrates it herself, and so yeah, I am really, really excited about continuing that. The beginning is a little harsh in terms of like her family situation, particularly her mother, but I made it over that, and so hopefully, just because it's World War II, and I always have trouble with that, but it's worth it, and it was really interesting read, like from that point, and I have lots more of the books to enjoy. I'm not even 10% through, and now we're gonna get to an unwrapping. Even though this video is long, I'm still gonna do it, and I don't know how the state of my unwrapping project, but I do know that I want to read this book, so we're gonna unwrap this book. I know what it is. It purple for my unwrappings is fantasy, and I just know by how large this is and what it feels like. I know what it is. I know what it is, but you don't. So let's explore what it could be. This one book to unwrap. I haven't unwrapped a book in like a year, so it is. Be careful, because this is a very nice edition. There's nothing there. I don't think there's anything there. Oh, so exciting, so exciting. And so here we go. It is, oh, it doesn't say, can you see? Can you see? Yes. Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales. I added the Christian. It's part of his name, but this just says Hans Andersen. So this is a folio edition of fairy tales by Hans Christian Andersen, and I am very much looking forward to reading it. They always have wonderful illustrations, and yeah, and I read the Grimm's fairy tales a couple of years ago, and I've had this wrapped up for ages, and oh wow, see, look at that. So, and I just felt like reading it, so I pulled it off the shelf, and I am going to read it, or at least start it this month. I may or may not finish it. Wow, there's a lot. There is a lot. So, yeah, I think there's about 20 or 30. It's hard to tell. Oh, well, the Snow Queen has several parts, so that'll take a while. So yeah, there you go. There is my unwrapped book. I have to keep this away from my face. I don't want to accidentally get like lipstick on it or something, or foundation, so we'll just keep it here. And I'm not going to hold up all the books because honestly, they would just pile in front of my face. I feel like I should do that now that I've said it, because they're just, you know, there's so many. There's so many, and then the Shakespeare, so it's a lot. Yeah, so that is how my April hopefully will be, and I hope that you are doing well, and just remember, folks, don't look at that. That was horrible. I was so close to, okay, stay inside. If you can, stay inside. Let's get through this. We can do it. We can do it. So there you go. There are the books that I am reading this month. Let me know what you're reading this month. Are you participating in any of these events? The BookTube Readathon, Women Write Classic Sci-Fi or Fantasy, and are you going to read Illuminae with me and Izzy? Let me know. Information about all of the books, save the Hans Christian Andersen because that's got to be a surprise, but the list of the rest of the books and the events will, as always, be in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back probably with our Friday reads on Friday. So, yeah. Take care.